How can you do all that needs done in life and still pursue your desire to learn French or the guitar or grow a plant or make art? You can't put a fiddle under your pillow and wake up playing it. Though how cool would that be? But one thing we can do, no matter how chaotic and overwhelming life can be, is know that every tiny small motion in the direction of those endeavors really do matter. And not only that, they add up over time with great momentum. Join me, Fain, as I interview painters and gardeners, designers and musicians, photographers and cooks, creative livers of any kind, who have somehow, in the middle of it all, continued on their creative paths, no matter what. Hello, hello. Wanted to let you know that you're in for a special treat at the end of this week's episode. This interview is of Rachel Bell. She's an amazing musician who plays for contra, ballfolk, and English country dances, along with a variety of her musician friends. Make sure to listen to the end to hear a sampling of her music. This is Fain House Radio, and I'm so glad you're here.
My name is Rachel Bell, and I am coming to you from Brattleboro, Vermont. I'm sitting here in the sunshine today. My main creative endeavors have been all things music, so playing for contra dances and English country dances and ball folk dances and playing concert and also teaching music both at camps and in workshop settings for adults, but for kids as well. I feel like teaching is a creative work, just as much as playing. Yeah, and a lot of tune writing as well. I love to write music and arrange.
Yeah, I want to hear more about the tune writing a little bit later because not every musician composes. So I'm really curious about that process. As we both know well, there are many instruments on the planet to choose from. I'm curious, why is the accordion your sole choice? Your soul as in not only, but soul as in your heart.
Yeah, I actually did not want to play the accordion. I was quite against it for a while because my grandmother used to say, well, you should really play the accordion. It's a lost art. And someone in the family needs to play the accordion. And I would say, no way. One of my cousins should play the accordion. Like someone else should do this. I should. So I really didn't want to. But I was super interested in Celtic music and French music. And it just so happened that I was studying to be a music teacher and learning a bunch of different instruments for that. And my flute teacher happened to have an accordion, and she knew I was interested in French music, and she just kind of shoved this accordion at me one day and said, take this home and play with it. Again, I was resistant because I'd only heard the kind of stereotypical like oompa accordion, which some people love, and it's just not my thing. So I'd only ever heard that, and so I had no interest in it. But I got that instrument home, and I totally fell in love with it. And I think it's like the versatility that I fell in love with, because it's a chromatic instrument. You can play in any key. There's a whole variety of sounds that you can get from it. You can play melody, you can play harmony, you can play backup. And I also loved the fact that it like melds into your body. Like you strap it on and you can feel the vibrations, and it almost becomes like another limb or something. I always loved that.
Also, I can't wait for people to hear a recording, a snippet we're going to play later. You have a lot of dexterity. You can play a lot of notes. Sometimes you're playing chords for backup, but there's a lot to that. Also, your accordion's so large, it's not like you can like watch your hands. So you have to go with this intuitive feel. And you're also doing like
that is true.
A very different thing with your left and your right hand and that kind of thing. Do you feel like playing other instruments first helped you with that dexterity?
Yeah, absolutely. So I studied piano quite seriously, and it's not the same as playing piano. That's sometimes a misconception about the accordion because it is different. But certainly having technique, like knowing my scales and my arpeggios and being very comfortable with piano fingering really helped. Even having a background in music theory is really helpful for accordion because the left hand is all set up in the circle of fifths. And if you understand the patterns, it all comes together very easily. But if you're just looking at like a sea of buttons and you don't really understand the patterns, it seems overwhelming. One other instrument, I was thinking, what other instruments? But, singing actually, like a bit of a background in choirs and singing is more helpful than you might think for accordion because it is really a wind instrument. You're thinking about the bellows and thinking about how to move the air through and how to make phrases that are uninterrupted. And so you have to think about breathing as if you were singing.
As you know, I've been working on the diatonic accordion, which is a story, wrapped up in being in France and all that stuff. And one of my first big issues, because, I'm more of a banjo player, was like, I would pull and then I would run out of air before I could finish the notes. Right.
Yeah.
Did you have did things like that? It's like a practical physical issue that you're not aware of in other instruments. Did you have some things like that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the bellows, that's a perfect example, because I think I hit this point a few years ago where I'd been playing professionally for a while. I was playing, many, many hours a day on this instrument. And I felt like kind of like had a pretty good grasp on it. And then all of a sudden I just realized I was working on getting ready for a recording. And so I was like listening really closely, and it's like having you're playing under a microscope, when you're doing that, you're just like listening really closely and you're hearing and I just realized, partly from that and partly from having some Zoom lessons with Karen Tweed, I just suddenly realized how much of a project the bellows are and how long I had to go or how far I had to go. And so that's been a major project, and it's ongoing, and it will probably be ongoing for my whole life. That awareness of when to put those bellows changes in, how to make them happen in a way that's not obtrusive if possible, or how to make them audible on purpose. So yeah, the bellows are a whole instrument all by themselves.
Yeah, totally. I really admire it. I love watching you play. When you decided, okay, this is my instrument, I love it, it loves me, did you seek out instructors, or were there people that you happened upon that became mentors on accident? Because you also appreciate very different styles. I mean, they're related, but different styles of traditional music.
Yeah, my first couple of inspirations were Karen Tweed and Jeremiah McLean. I'd heard them through various things and events. I found their playing so stunning, and I still do. I listen to both of them, and I just it's like it makes me love the instrument. Made me want to play the instrument in the first place, and I was always struck by them, by the breadth of sound and like soul and style, just all these things that they could coax out of the instrument, from these very like lyrical, beautiful things to, really exciting, energetic dance music. And I was lucky enough to be at Ashokan Fiddle and Dance Camp a bunch of years when one or the other of them was there. And so I wasn't living in a place where I could take lessons like every week with someone. And at the time, Zoom lessons weren't really a thing. And so I just would go to this week-long camp in the summer and soak up as much as I could. I was highly influenced by the two of them during that time. And of course, since then, there have been many, many more additions, like people whose playing I admire. But that was kind of the start.
I always feel like people that are total masters of their instrument, part of what is so appealing is they aren't panicked between notes. It's like they have a relaxedness to it. So they'll let the whole note go from beginning to end.
What a great way to think about. Yeah.
And it just feels so good. And it's really hard to do because when we're just getting going, we're like already worried about the next part.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's so special for them to have somebody like you so curious about what they're doing, because that's generational passing,
Passing it on. Yeah.
One thing that plagues anyone learning anything new, especially an instrument, is the sitting down and practicing. And we'll think of it all day. Okay, I need to practice. Sometimes it feels like a heavy weight, or like the little angel or the devil sitting on your shoulder, And when we finally do sit down, we're like, oh my gosh, why did I resist this? This is great. And your goal is 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden it becomes 25, and it's so wonderful, but it's so hard to just stop and sit and play. You've told many stories about the many hours you have played and how much you do practice, which is important because it's also your profession. But how do you deal with that in yourself, to sit down and practice to that extent of time? And what do you tell your students?
One thing that I do for myself, and I tell my students, I started borrowing this idea from my bandmate, Becky Tracey. We're both teaching a bunch right now. And so we're trading ideas all the time about how to talk to people about things like practicing. And so one thing we've talked about a lot is pairing up your practice time with something else. So you practice every day after you brush your teeth or after you eat lunch or whatever. Like if you pair it up with something else, sometimes that removes some of the friction of, oh, I have to stop doing whatever activity I'm doing and I have to go get my instrument out of its case. And if you just like flow, if you can kind of set yourself up for success so that you can flow from one thing into the other, and it's just the natural thing that happens every day, that can be really helpful. For me, sometimes it, just like you were saying, if you start and you say, I'm going to play for 5 minutes, that's all I'm going to ask of myself. And inevitably when I do that, then I end up playing for much longer because you kind of get going and you get inspired. And I think if you're always looking toward what inspires you and what makes you happy, that will lead the way. Having something that you're really excited about, whether it's a tune that you're working on, or for me, it's often like ensemble playing and collaboration is really where my heart is. And so oftentimes my playing or my practicing on my own is going that direction. It's like, I want to work on this concept or this skill so that I can take it to the band and try it out with them. And then I think the other thing, if you're getting stuck, if you're trying to work on a tune or work on a certain skill or something, then just changing it up is sometimes good. I found early in the pandemic when my normal framework for practicing went away, like gigs went away, and there was a while when even like doing band stuff was tricky. And so I had a really hard time figuring out how to practice during that time. And what finally kind of unlocked it for me was doing something very, very different. Like I found a book that was all about playing melodies on the left hand. And I kind of got into it because it was unrelated to any of the stuff that I was sad about that had stopped happening. So sometimes like listening to something different or working on a different kind of tune or a different book or a different goal can really help, I think.
That makes me think of each of us like our own snow globe, and you just shake up the snow globe.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
And that is good for us. It doesn't mean everything's going to fall apart. It means we're still contained. We're just kind of rearranging and shifting and seeing where it falls and that kind of thing. And I love what you're saying too about pairing it with something else, because sometimes what happens is we'll choose laundry over that. We'll choose a duty.
There's always something, right? There's always something that's like more urgent.
Right. It's like duty versus what we love, and we'll just choose duty even though it doesn't make us feel as good as what we love. It's so interesting, man. We all do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the funniest thing that's ever happened to you because you just happen to have an accordion with you?
This is the best question ever. I feel like there must be an answer to this question that's so fantastic that I'm not thinking of. It's like asking all my bandmates, like, what's the funniest thing that's happened? Well, there are just like I'm just going to tell you some little things that happen on a regular basis, and probably all piano accordion players can relate to this. There's the thing where like people duck to get out of the way when you swing it up. Like I carry it in a backpack, and so like swing it up over my shoulder, and people are just like, and then there's of course that everyone has their stories about getting tangled up at airport security because they think it's a typewriter or they think that there's a bomb in it or something. And so there's that whole thing. And then something that has happened to me a lot in my lifetime is that accordions like show up on my porch like zucchini in the summer. They just appear out of nowhere, like many of them, because everyone in the world seems to have like a moldy accordion that's been sitting in their basement for 30 years. And they come, they're like, you're an accordion player and you might like this. So there's that. So it's just like a number of small quirky things.
It makes me think of, isn't there a joke about leaving a banjo or an accordion in the car in a big city and it's unlocked? They're like, oh no, go back. I gotta lock it. And they go back.
Yeah, it's actually
and
true.
They have multiplied and there's like 30 accordions and nobody stole it ever. Or banjo. Yeah. They're interchangeable.
Yeah. They are interchangeable. Bagpipes too, I think, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Those three, they go together.
Mhm.
Also, it's like, beware, accordion players on average take a longer time through security.
Yes,
Plan
it's
for it.
true. Yeah, exactly.
As you've already mentioned, you really love collaborating. And that's one thing I love about following what you do is like, ooh, who's she playing with next?
Yeah.
And you play with a fellow high caliber to you know, these really great musicians. And also it's very clear that the people you're playing with, that you all love playing with each other. That's not the same as playing tunes. This is like, you guys are really loving playing together. And it's
Yeah.
great to see. What's a little bit you might say about what collaborating means to you?
Oh man, it's just everything to me. It's like I really have very little use for just playing music alone. I mean, there is the practicing bit that we talked about, that's important, but I just love collaborating with great people. It's the best. I think a lot of it is because I am lucky to have these amazing bandmates and collaborators who I adore, and they inspire me. They make me do things that I wouldn't think of on my own. You know, I hear them play something and then it inspires me to play something else. And then that inspires them to play something else. And there's this like great flow and exchange of ideas. And I love seeing how many different kinds of textures you can get, like taking two people in a room with two different instruments and seeing how many different sounds you can create from the combination and how many different things you can do with a tune. It's so much fun. It's the best.
It's really fun to think about how you don't have one band. You're doing such a different set of things with different
It's true.
people. So it's almost like
Mhm.
your fellow person inspires a different set list and all these different things.
Yeah.
Also, there's a big difference between playing only concerts or being a dance
Yeah,
musician, and you do both.
absolutely.
And I think you're a really extra great dance musician, and you collaborate with a lot of great dance musicians. There's a
Mhm.
energy and rhythm to it that is important, that's different than playing for a concert. Who are some of the people you've been playing with these last couple years?
I moved to Brattleboro just a couple of years ago because my bandmate Becky Tracey lives here. And so now we live just like half a mile away from each other. So that's amazing. She plays fiddle and octave fiddle. She's an amazing musician, dance musician. And then I was lucky enough that Karen Axelrod, who's an extraordinary English country dance piano player and plays lots of different kinds of things, she moved just half a mile up the street the other way from me. And our bandmate, Eric Merton, who plays fiddle and viola, he lives like about an hour and a half away. So there's that concentration. And then my long, long, long time bandmate and friend, like probably the person I've played with the longest, is Andrew VanNordstrand. And he moved here 35 minutes up the road just 6 months ago or so. So I've gotten to have a lot more time with him. And the only problem is that Susan Cavra still lives really far away from me.
I was waiting for you to
I was like,
mention her.
okay, can she come live here too? That would be really the best possible scenario. So
Yeah.
she's in Nashville, Tennessee. We do all kinds of fun things together. I mean, I feel like my connection with you is largely kind of through her, and we've done French music things together. And Susan and I, in addition to playing together, we love to compose together. So I compose English country dance tunes and she writes choreography for them. And we do it in a real kind of joint way, like going back and forth with those ideas. So I'm really lucky to have these great people.
I think it's gold.
Yeah, I'm just really lucky because they all inspire me in different ways, and I love being with them, and it's just so fun and fulfilling to make music together.
And it's a great example of, what's the quote, we're more together than alone kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I feel that way. Absolutely.
One way that we got to know each other is through a love of, well, traditional dance, but also balfolk,
Yes.
which I've been learning through my husband's family, and they're all
Yep.
French, and being there, having a background in traditional dance, and then to go fall in love with that. And it was so fun to meet you, and you were like driving on it, and you had been to Gentine already, I think, and
Yeah.
you'd been in France. And
Saint-Gervais.
yeah, so I mean, we could talk some, of course, about balfolk. It's for people that don't
We could
know.
talk all day about ball folk. Yeah.
Exactly. For anyone other that doesn't know, it's like In France and Europe, it's like their version of a contra or square dance. It's social dance together, it's dance of the people. And so it's meant for community dancing. So sometimes you're in partners, sometimes you're in lines, sometimes it's really like sweet and syrupy, sometimes it's really raucous. It was so fun being able to teach with you multiple times and the back and forth that we've had. So anyway, that's going to happen again in our future. I know.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. One of my favorite memories of meeting you was at the very first time I was at Brasstown, and we just kind of accidentally ended up sitting in the pavilion playing accordion French tunes. We're like, oh, you know that kind of tune too? It was so fun.
It's true. There aren't many people. I felt the same way. Like we're in Western North Carolina. So like who am I going to play some Balfour tunes with? Yeah. Or share this accordion love with. I'm still learning very much. I'm not I'm not at the level you are, but it's been fun too, because for Jérôme, my husband, he's who I could play with. And then you had that appreciation, you and Susan, of him as a singer. And then we were doing some dances where he's singing, we dance to him a cappella, and that is so fun. So I can't wait to be doing all that again. I know it's hard to like boil this down into a few sentences, but what part has travel played in your musical journey?
If I boiled it down, I would say there are two main things, and one is actually, being in France. Like I've been really lucky to get to go with Susan to France, and she knows people over there, and we've danced and played and hung out with people, and having that firsthand immersion in the music has been incredibly influential. And then also just in general, just being on the road a lot before the pandemic, playing all over the place, hearing lots of different people play music, dancing to other bands, sitting around, staying at people's houses, playing tunes and stuff. It all feeds the creativity, even just seeing different places and eating different food and meeting different people. It all feeds that creativity.
What has been one of your biggest struggles when it comes to sticking to your creative path and, making a living that way and making the choices that you've made for your creative lifestyle?
I think balance is probably the biggest. I mean, there's sort of a pre-pandemic answer and a during the pandemic answer, and the pre-pandemic answer is definitely balance. So trying to figure out how to making music is the thing that I want to do, but in order to make music, you have to answer a ton of email, and you have to buy plane tickets and do a lot of record keeping, and you can really get buried under like the admin aspect of it. So that's a real challenge. And then during the pandemic, it's just been challenging to not have the normal outlets for creativity, and even like inspiration kind of comes and goes because we're all in this position of watching the world be in the shape that it's in.
Do you feel like you ever wavered on your path where there's part of you that's like, I should just go be an accountant and have a day job? Because
no.
Yeah, that's awesome.
No, it's always worth it. There's always something that I'll go like down into the dungeon a little bit where I'm like, I can't keep up with my email, and then I'll play a tune with someone, or I'll play a concert and see someone dancing or see someone just kind of light up when a tune starts, and it just is all worth it. There's no question. I can't not do it. It's so much who I am.
One thing I've talked about some with my brother is no matter what choice we make for work, whether it's the creative line of work, well, creativity is in every job, technically. I mean, you can have fun ways of seeing anything, but any job we choose, there's going to be a chunk of it, a nice percentage that's very hard to deal with. So it's sort of like, do we choose this one or this one? And that's so great to also wrestle with it, but be so sure, have the clarity. It gets you through the hard times. What is filling up your inspiration cup these days?
The woods. During the pandemic, there have been a lot of new challenges for playing music, of course, and a lot of sadness around not having regular gigs and missing the whole music and dance scene. And the most healing thing for me has been just spending a ton of time in the woods and exploring. Yeah, just a lot of hiking around and snowshoeing, and I feel like just filled up from nature whenever I go out there. That's really one of the biggest things during the pandemic. And then I have been lucky to have my local bandmates here in town who I'm able to keep playing with. And like Becky and I love to rehearse. And so we'll just spend hours digging through possibilities for making an arrangement, and we'll like take a tune and see how many different ways we can play it. And we call that the palette. We create the palette, and then we had to take things away to make the arrangement like short enough for the concert. So then there's a chainsaw. So we have the palette and the chainsaw, and we do that every week. It's just one of the things that this has kept me going and kept the inspiration flowing.
You know, do you ever feel like, sometimes I feel like in playing music, it's like touching a different part in the brain than, you know, painting or talking with small children or cooking or whatever, reading a book.
Right.
It's almost like this wave of awesome emotion just flows over you. Do you feel like that when you finally sit down in rehearsal? Like, this feels so good. This is different than all my other days where I'm not playing music.
Yeah. And it kind of can take you out of whatever is going on, however crazy the world is, because playing music is such an in the moment kind of thing. It's like you really have to be present.
I was going to ask if you could tell people, if they're curious about, you do live streams, your tune book that you came out with, and, or, you know, being part of some of these live streams, how do they find you?
I try to keep my website pretty up to date. I don't always succeed, but rachelbellmusic.com is a good place to find most things. I came out with a book of original tunes in May, I guess. You can find that on the website, or you can go to Bandcamp and type in Rachel Bell Music, and it's there. And I really try to keep the Facebook updates coming about live streams, and Becky and I will have a CD coming out. There's always kind of something happening as far as a Zoom gig or a live stream or something, and that's probably the best place.
In honor of all the ups and downs of life, which is our only option, do you have any last words of encouragement for anyone and everyone out there trying their best to fold creativity into their daily lives?
I guess we just have to keep at it. It's going to have ups and downs just like life. There are days when it feels totally inspiring, and then there are days when I feel like I'm not saying anything at all with my instrument, and I hate the way everything sounds. And so I think we just have to kind of keep at it, keep moving forward. And I think taking in as much inspiration from as many sources as possible. I can't speak to what that means for a visual artist, but I imagine it's similar for music. What that means to me is listening not just to the genre that I'm playing, but also listening to alt rock or classical music or whatever, like just going with a wide net and taking in as much different information, and also allowing openness for other kinds of inspiration. Like I find that sometimes if I'm really stuck when I'm trying to write a tune or something, the best thing for me to do is to take a walk or to cook a nice meal or something and let my brain just absorb some other kind of input.
Something else can help drive the next idea without you trying to think yourself out of it, kind of thing.
Exactly.
New episodes are coming out each week, and I sure hope that you subscribe to the show so that these new episodes pop up automatically in your feed. And if you know anyone who might enjoy listening, please do share it with them too. I'm Annie Fain Barrelon. Thanks so much for listening. And I'd like to play you a medley of tunes called Barracuda by Kenneth Murphy, followed by Turtles in the Sinkhole by Rachel Bell, played by Eloise and Company, which includes Rachel Bell, Becky, Tracey, and Andrew VanNordstrand. Hope it makes you want to dance in your kitchen. Enjoy.